Hello, my dear friends. My mother-in-law handed me a glass of wine and smiled. A special recipe just for my favorite son-in-law, she said sweetly. I forced a smile, thanked her, but inside, I froze. There was something in her eyes that sent a chill down my spine. And exactly 45 minutes later, the entire dinner table exploded, but not because of me. My name is Lucas Rowe. I'm 33 years old and a documentary photographer based in Portland, Oregon. I'm not a famous name. I don't have 1 million followers on social media. But I love what I do, telling the hidden stories of life through a lens. Every photograph I take is a way for me to hold on to this world, especially after losing nearly everything at a young age. I grew up in a fractured family. My mom passed away from illness when I was a kid, and my dad walked out when I was in 9th grade. I spent 2 years living out of my car, going to school by day, working at night, chasing a dream that one day I'd have my own gallery. No one believed in me until I met Isabel. We met at a small exhibit in Portland, where unknown artists hung their work inside a repurposed warehouse gallery. Isabel was finishing her master's in education at the time, deeply passionate about working with special needs students and fighting for educational equity. She stood for what felt like hours in front of one of my photos, a shot of a homeless man shielding himself from the sun with a paper bag. When she walked over and asked what camera I used, I knew something in my life was about to change. We fell in love naturally, gently, like we'd known each other forever. Isabel didn't care how much money I had or what brand of camera I owned. She cared about whether I was happy doing what I loved. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like some invisible kid in a loud city. Then I met her parents. Her mother, Marjorie, is the kind of woman who could easily step out of a psychological thriller. Polished, charming, and surgically passive-aggressive. Behind every polite smile was a flicker of judgment. Her questions were always delivered with concern, but laced with venom. Photography? Oh, is that a hobby, or do you actually make a living? Her father, Charles, didn't bother with subtlety. He was a financial executive, the kind of man who measured worth in square footage, investment portfolios, and the brand of car you drove. From the first handshake, he looked at me the way someone might look at a waiter who brought them the wrong drink. Still, I tried. I really tried. Every holiday, I brought high-end wine. I framed my best photos as gifts. I proudly showed them articles that featured my work in National Geographic. But it didn't matter. Charles would glance over the print and say things like, "Does this pay anything?" Every family dinner was an interrogation disguised as small talk. Charles would grill me about my income, while Marjorie would casually bring up Isabel's exes, an esteemed cardiologist, an architect, someone who was opening an eco-resort chain. Isabel would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology for the people who raised her. But I could tell. She was stuck between two worlds. I didn't blame her. Isabel loved her parents the way any girl would love the people who once took her to school dances and band recitals, who packed her lunches and made her believe the world was safe. I never wanted to break that, so I stayed quiet. For too long. I smiled at their backhanded compliments. I endured the not-so-subtle jabs. I told myself time would earn their respect. That one day, they'd see me for who I was. But I missed the signs. And worse, I ignored the ones I did see. Marjorie would always find a way to pull Isabel into the kitchen anytime I mentioned a new exhibit or client. Family photos would mysteriously crop me out. Charles once suggested therapy for Isabel's impulsive decisions while staring straight at me. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. That they'd come around. That love would be enough. Then came that night in March. It was Marjorie's birthday dinner. Isabel begged me to go even though I just returned from a photo assignment in Montana. Trudging through waist-deep snow for 10 days to shoot bison for a nature magazine. I was running on fumes, but I showered, put on a clean shirt, and showed up. That's when it happened. Marjorie handed me a glass of sangria in the kitchen, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. "I made it just for you, sweetheart," she said with a sugary smile. But her eyes, they flicked left and right, as if checking to make sure we were alone. The liquid had a strange glint under the kitchen light. Not bubbles, not pulp, a faint shimmer, like something floating just beneath the surface. I took the glass, smiled, then quietly walked into the dining room and placed it in front of Charles. He barely looked up from his phone. Sangria? I said cheerfully. Special treat from your wife. He took it without hesitation. I kept the other glass, the safe one, and poured myself some water. Dinner went on like usual. Charles bragged about recent business deals. Marjorie fussed over the place settings. Isabel's brother and sister-in-law made polite small talk. I just sat there, counting the minutes. 20 minutes in, Charles started to sweat. 45 minutes in, he was white as a sheet, rushing to the bathroom with a hand over his mouth. Marjorie froze, our eyes locked, and in that moment, without a single word spoken, we both understood what had just happened. She had tried to drug me, but I didn't drink it. He did. The glass of sangria in my hand barely trembled. But inside me was a storm. Isabel was laughing about something with her brother at the end of the table. Charles, my father-in-law, was still glued to his phone, completely unaware when I slid the sangria in front of him. A toast for the most successful man at this table, I said, half joking. He didn't even look up. Thanks, he muttered and took a sip. No hesitation, no suspicion. I returned to my seat and poured myself a glass of water. Marjorie sat across from me, smiling thinly. Her eyes studied me like a hawk. You're not trying the sangria? She asked sweetly. Owen said it's your favorite. Homemade, too. I shrugged. I'm more in the mood for water tonight, saving my palate for your cake. Her expression faltered just for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled again. Dinner went on as usual. Charles bragged about real estate deals and new investors. Marjorie bragged about the custom table runner she ordered from Italy. I barely listened. My eyes were on Charles. 20 minutes passed. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. His complexion turned pale. His voice faltered between sentences. But he kept talking about yacht clubs and portfolios, as if nothing was wrong. 40 minutes in, he reached for the edge of the table. Is someone blasting the air conditioner? I feel a little off. Before anyone could respond, Charles stood abruptly. His chair clattered to the floor. Bathroom, where's the... Isabel jumped up, alarmed, and pointed down the hall. He stumbled out, hand on his stomach. A moment later, the sound of retching echoed through the house like a gunshot through a cathedral. I remained still. Marjorie had frozen too, her napkin still clutched in her hand. Her face had gone rigid, not with concern, not with panic, with realization. He drank the wrong glass. Our eyes met across the room, and a cold silence passed between us. I slipped the untouched glass, the one meant for me, into my coat pocket. Oh my God, could it be the oysters? She said suddenly, her voice shrill and too loud. We had raw shellfish. Maybe he's allergic. Isabel and her brother rushed down the hall toward Charles. Vanessa, Owen's wife, started dialing the family doctor. I stayed seated. When the noise subsided, I stepped into the kitchen, pulled out my phone, and dialed the one person I knew could tell me what was in that drink, Caleb, my best friend from college. Now a biochemist running his own private lab. Don't ask too many questions, I said. I'm sending you something. A liquid sample. Personal matter. Urgent. He didn't hesitate. Bring it first thing in the morning. And Ethan. Yeah? I hope you're not involved in something worse than you think. I hung up and sat back down at the now-ruined dinner table. The crystal shimmered under the lights. The food was cold. The chairs askew. The candles still flickering. For the first time in all the years I'd tried to be accepted by Isabel's family, I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry. I felt clear. Because now I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overreacting. I had proof, not of the backhanded compliments, not of the snide remarks, but of a deliberate act. Plan. Marjorie had tried to take me down. Not with screaming or insults, with chemicals, with a smile. But I didn't drink it. 3 days later, Caleb called. Ethan, he said slowly, I ran the tests. The glass contained benzodiazepines. A mild dose, nothing lethal, but enough to knock someone out for several hours. Drowsiness, confusion, possibly memory loss. I said nothing. Where did it come from? Family dinner, I replied, then thanked him and asked for a printed report. That evening, I didn't tell Isabel. Not yet. Instead, I said I needed a break from Sunday dinners. Told her I had to focus on preparing for an upcoming gallery exhibit. She looked disappointed but didn't press. Over the next 2 weeks, I started digging. Marjorie had multiple prescriptions for Xanax from 3 different doctors. She had been doubling and even tripling her intake for years. There were whispers about her in town. Strange behavior at a neighbor's cocktail party. Rumors of stolen jewelry from her country club. Most of it had been quietly buried, thanks to Charles. I compiled it all. Then waited for the right moment. It came when Isabel mentioned my mom needs new headshots for her social media. She specifically asked if you'd take them. That was my opening. The following Saturday I arrived at their house alone. Camera bag in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. Marjorie greeted me with perfectly done makeup and a silk blouse. Charles wasn't home. Before we begin, I said calmly, there's something you should see. I handed her the envelope. Inside was Caleb's toxicology report, along with her overlapping prescriptions and printed gossip forum threads about her behavior. She opened it. Her fingers trembled. "This is absurd," she whispered. "I would never. We both know what happened," I interrupted. "What I don't know is why." Her face hardened. "You're not good enough for my daughter. You never will be. A man should provide stability, not photographs. And drugging your daughter's husband provides that stability?" I asked, voice still level. "It wouldn't have hurt you," she snapped. "Just made you sick. Made you miss that ridiculous gallery opening you keep talking about. So Isabel could finally see how unreliable you are." I let that sit. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to tell Charles what you did. Then the two of you are going to start treating me with respect. Not because you believe I deserve it, but because if you don't, Isabel will learn exactly who her parents are." She let out a cold laugh. "She'll never believe you over us." I picked up my camera bag. "Maybe not, but she'll believe lab results, prescription records, and the neighbors you've alienated. Are you really willing to bet your relationship with your daughter on that?" I left without taking a single photograph. That night, Marjorie called Isabel in tears, claiming I had been hostile and threatening during the photo session. When Isabel confronted me, I showed her everything. The lab results, the prescriptions, screenshots of text messages her mother had sent me over the years, passive-aggressive, manipulative, invasive. "My mom wouldn't do this," she kept whispering, but her voice lacked conviction. The next day, she confronted her parents. I wasn't there, but when she came home, her eyes were red from crying. "My dad says it's a misunderstanding," she said quietly. "That you're trying to drive a wedge between us because you feel inadequate." I nodded. "I expected that. What do you think?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just crawled into bed and turned away from me. I had finally fought back, but somehow I'd become the villain in their story. And worse, they were turning her against me too. 2 weeks passed. Isabel barely spoke to me. She went to her parents' house alone, came back quiet, red-eyed, and full of doubt. I buried myself in work, spending long hours in my studio, waiting for the storm to pass. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just wait this out. Then one morning, a package arrived. No return address. Just my name scribbled in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "You need to see this. Vanessa, Owen's wife." I plugged it into my laptop. What loaded up first was grainy home security footage from Charles and Marjorie's kitchen, timestamped the night of the dinner. There she was, Marjorie, standing at the counter, 2 glasses in front of her. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small vial, and added something to one of the glasses. She stirred it, looked at it, then quickly pocketed the vial when she heard footsteps, me entering the room. The next clip showed me taking the 2 glasses into the dining room. Then Charles drinking from the tainted one. I already knew this part, but what came next froze me in place. It was footage from later that night, after Isabel and I had left. Marjorie was screaming. "You drank the wrong glass," she yelled. "You idiot. That was for Ethan," Charles shouted back. "This isn't the first time you've pulled something like this." I paused the video, my hands shaking. This wasn't just proof of intent. This was proof of a pattern. And that Charles knew. The next file was from 2 days after the dinner. Marjorie and Charles were arguing in the living room. "He knows what you did," Charles said. "So what?" Marjorie snapped. "It's his word against mine. Isabel will never believe him. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised." "Don't worry," she added coldly. "I've already started planting seeds, talking to her about the cracks in their marriage. By the time I'm done, she'll be filing for divorce and thinking it was her idea." I shut the laptop, stunned. This wasn't just about me. This was about control. Systematic, generational control. They had done it before. And they were doing it again. I immediately called Vanessa. Why did you send this to me? I asked. Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen, she said quietly. They told him I wasn't good enough, that I was unstable. It nearly worked. Why didn't you say anything before? Owen doesn't know, she admitted. He worships his dad, thinks his parents are perfect. I tried to tell him, but he said I was paranoid. I just couldn't let them do it again. Not to you. The next day, I received a text. Charles, we should talk. Man to man. No wives. We met at his country club in a private room. He was already sipping bourbon. Ethan, he said, families are complicated. My wife, she can be difficult, but she means well. Drugging someone means well? I asked. He waved a hand dismissively. A misunderstanding. She's on medication. Probably mixed up the glasses. I have the footage, Charles. His face changed. Hard. Cold. Calculating. What do you want? He asked. Money? Is that what this is about? I always knew you married Isabel for financial reasons. I want you both to leave us alone, I said calmly. Stop poisoning my marriage. Stop whispering lies to my wife. He leaned forward. You think you're the first? We've dealt with people like you before. People who think they can take advantage of our family. Ask Isabel about Thomas, he added with a smirk. Her fiancé before you. I blinked. What? Nice guy. Doctor. We didn't like his background. Took us 6 months to convince her he was cheating. She broke it off. Came home crying to Daddy. History repeats, son. On the drive home, I called Isabel's old college roommate, Bethany. Oh God, she said. Thomas? That was awful. He was perfect for her. But her parents, they planted fake texts. Photos. Told Isabel he was cheating. He tried to explain, but she didn't believe him anymore. They completely broke her down. It all made sense now. This wasn't about me. This was a cycle. And I wasn't the first casualty. I didn't confront Isabel. Not yet. Instead, I started building my case. I tracked down Thomas. He was reluctant at first, but when I told him everything, he sent me emails, exchanges between him and Isabel, proof of how her parents had sabotaged their relationship. I reached out to old friends of Isabel's. People she used to be close to but suddenly lost touch with. Every story was similar. They tried to help her think for herself, and then they were gone. Vanessa sent more clips, Marjorie and Charles discussing their plans for us. Once they divorce, we'll convince her to move back in, Charles said in one clip. She can run the family foundation. Meet someone better. I compiled it all onto a drive. Then I invited Owen and Vanessa to dinner, without telling Isabel. After dessert, I hooked my laptop to the TV. There's something you need to see, I said. We watched. The videos. The arguments. The gaslighting. The manipulation. Owen sat in silence, shaking his head. This can't be real. That's not my parents. When it ended, Isabel turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed you to see it yourself, I said. Not just what they did to me, but what they've done to you. Your whole life. Owen stood abruptly. You edited this. You had to. My parents would never. Vanessa touched his arm. They did it to us too, Owen. Why do you think they suddenly started liking me after we had James? A grandchild meant leverage. He looked pale. You never told me. I tried, she whispered. You didn't want to listen. Later that night, Isabel lay beside me. I need time, she said softly. But I believe you. I'm sorry I doubted you. The next morning, Marjorie called. Isabel put her on speaker. Darling, she said cheerfully, I think you should come stay with us for a while. Marriage is hard. Maybe some space would help. Mom, Isabel said firmly. I've seen the videos. Silence. What videos? The security footage. Of you drugging Ethan's drink. Of you and Dad planning to break up my marriage. A pause. Whatever he's shown you has been manipulated. You know Ethan's always been jealous of our family. Stop, Isabel said. We're coming over tonight. All of us. No more lies. She hung up. Then turned to me. They'll deny everything. They'll try to twist it all. I nodded. I know. So, what's our plan? For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I think it's time your parents met the real me. That evening, as our car pulled up in front of Isabel's family estate, my heart beat faster with every step she took beside me. She hadn't said a word the entire ride, just held my hand tightly. The air was heavy, like we were walking into a battlefield. Not to start a war, but to end one that had been silently raging for years. Owen and Chloe were already there, sitting stiffly in the living room. Chloe gave me a knowing look. Owen avoided eye contact, his face tight, like someone who just discovered his parents might be strangers. Isabel and I stepped in last. I carried my camera bag. Quietly, I placed it on the coffee table in the middle of the room. No one asked what I planned to do. Everyone knew. Marjorie came out from the kitchen, still drying her hands on a crisp white towel. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Charles followed, dignified as always, but his expression lacked the usual self-assurance. When they noticed the camera equipment, both of them paused. I pressed the record button. The small click echoed like thunder in the silence. "What is this?" Charles asked, voice low, trying to keep things calm. "This isn't an ordinary family dinner," I said. "This is a conversation we're going to have once, and it's going to be recorded." Marjorie slowly placed the towel down on the arm of a chair. Her eyes scanned the room, calculating. "I don't understand. If there's been a misunderstanding, Ethan, this could have been handled privately." "It's not a misunderstanding," Isabel interrupted. Her voice shook slightly, but she didn't flinch. "It's serious, and I need you to admit what you did." Marjorie's smile faltered. "Sweetheart, I don't know what Ethan has been telling you, but it's not just what I've told her." I cut in. "It's the lab report, the overlapping prescriptions, the footage." I pulled out a thick envelope and set it next to the USB drive on the table, clear evidence of everything they thought would stay buried. Toxicology results, duplicate prescriptions, video files, audio clips, all of it. Isabel sat next to me, her hand ice cold in mine. Marjorie turned to Charles, searching for backup, but for the first time he said nothing, just stared down at the floor. His jaw clenched. "I can't believe you would do this," Isabel said to her mother, voice tight with emotion. "You drugged my husband, lied to me, manipulated everything." Marjorie snapped. "I did what I thought was right for you. Ethan is unstable, withdrawn. He shuts us out. He's always been." "What?" I asked, calm, measured. "Not good enough? Not a doctor? Not a lawyer? Not making 7 figures? Or just the only person in your orbit you couldn't control?" She stayed silent, and this time no one came to her defense. No outstretched hand from Charles. No knowing glance from Isabel. Just the camera, blinking red, capturing everything. Then Owen stood up, voice trembling. "You said the same things about Chloe. You told me she was manipulative, controlling. And now I see who the manipulative ones really are." Marjorie collapsed into the armchair, eyes darting. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought I was helping." "No," Isabel said. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and you still did it." Chloe reached over and placed a hand on Isabel's shoulder. And for the first time since all this began, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Unity. A family once fragmented finally facing the truth together. I stood, packed the envelope and drive back into my bag. "I don't plan on ruining your reputation. If I wanted to, I already would have. But if either of you tries to poison our relationship again, figuratively or literally, I won't stay silent." Charles finally looked up. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry," he said, barely above a whisper. Marjorie didn't speak. I turned to Isabel. "Do you want to stay or go?" She didn't hesitate. "Let's go." We walked out without a fight, without a scream. Just the quiet, final ending to years of doubt, dismissal, and denial. Weeks later, we received a letter from Charles's law office. Inside was the deed to the house we were renting, now in our names. Attached was a trust fund for our unborn child. No conditions. No expectations. Just surrender. Isabel read the last line and looked at me. "Do you think this is an apology?" I shook my head. "No. I think it's an admission. The only one he knows how to give." A few months later, our daughter was born. We named her Liza after my grandmother, the only person who ever told me you deserve to be loved. When Marjorie and Charles visited at the hospital, they brought gifts and flowers but offered no parenting advice, no financial lectures, no judgmental glances. They held Eliza briefly, posed for a photo, then left quietly. That night, Isabel and I sat on the porch swing, watching our daughter sleep in her bassinet. Do you think they've really changed? She asked. I looked up at the stars. No, I said. But I think they finally understand that they can't change you. And maybe that's enough. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I didn't win by fighting fire with fire. I won by choosing not to play their game. By protecting what mattered. By living my life on my terms. And that in the end was the sweetest revenge of all. That spring, our lives slowed down in the best way. No more Sunday calls from Marjorie. No more sugar-coated jabs pretending to be advice. Isabel began writing again, something she'd abandoned years ago because her mother told her it was a nice little hobby. She started blogging about gentle parenting, healing from toxic families, and what it means to be a mother without losing yourself. As for me, I took photos of Eliza almost daily. She was light, proof that beauty can bloom even after a storm. My gallery started gaining traction. One day, a major magazine reached out asking me to shoot a photo series titled The Modern Man. They said I had a gift for telling stories in silence. I guess that's what happens when you've spent years living inside it. Marjorie and Charles kept their distance. They didn't interfere. They didn't call uninvited. Occasionally, they'd send gifts for Eliza by mail. No notes. No phone calls. Just things. I knew what they were trying to say. We still want to be here. And perhaps more importantly, we know the rules now. For Eliza's first birthday, we threw a small party at the park. Friends, neighbors, Isabel's former classmates. Owen and Chloe came with their son, James, and a box of cupcakes. Marjorie and Charles weren't invited, but they showed up anyway, from a distance. Charles held a silver frame. Inside was a photo I had once taken of our family under the trees, Isabel holding Eliza, sunlight catching her hair. He didn't approach. He just nodded at me from the edge of the grass. I nodded back. A man who once looked through me now choosing to look from afar, perhaps for the better. A week later, I received a handwritten letter. Blue ink. Neat cursive. It was from Marjorie. Ethan, I've never been good at apologies, and I think I've missed too many chances to offer them. I'm not asking Isabel to forget what happened, nor am I asking for your forgiveness. But one day, Eliza will grow up. And I hope she learns that even her grandparents tried to change. Not because someone forced us to, but because we didn't want to remain strangers in her life forever. Marjorie. I folded the letter and placed it in the same wooden box where I kept my grandmother's scarf, old Polaroids, and the letter Isabel wrote to me on our wedding day. Not because I forgave them, but because I no longer needed the anger. Time moved on. Isabel was invited to speak at a conference on family systems and psychological control. I sat in the front row with Eliza asleep in my arms while Isabel spoke about the difference between loyalty and identity, about how for years she confused pleasing her parents with loving herself, and how motherhood taught her that protection sometimes looks like distance. After the talk, a young woman approached her crying. "Thank you," she said. "Because of you. I know I don't have to repeat what hurt me." Isabel squeezed her hand. I watched, proud not because she stood on a stage, but because she had stopped hiding from her truth. One evening, I was editing photos in the studio when Eliza, now almost 3, walked in carrying an old family album. She flipped to a page with a photo of us in the forest. "Daddy, where are Grandma and Grandpa?" The question caught me off guard. Isabel heard from the kitchen and joined us, kneeling beside Eliza. "Grandma and Grandpa are learning how to be better grandparents," she said gently. "Before, they didn't really know how, but they're trying now." Eliza nodded, satisfied, and turned to another page. "Children are quick to forgive if adults are willing to change." I looked at Isabel, then at Eliza, and my throat tightened a little, not from grief, but from gratitude, because we weren't perfect, but we had fought to be free. The next month, I published a photo book called The Spaces Between, a collection of images capturing tension, silence, and healing between people who love each other deeply but don't always get it right. In the foreword, I wrote, "Some wounds don't need to scream to be heard. They just need to be seen, understood, and consciously chosen not to be passed on." The book got nominated for a National Photography Award. I didn't expect to win, but I had told my story in a way no one could rewrite. One chilly afternoon, Isabel walked into the studio holding an envelope. No sender, just our names on the front. Inside was a wedding invitation. From Thomas, the man who once almost married Isabel. At the bottom of the card, he wrote, Isabel and Ethan, sometimes the road we're blocked from leads us exactly where we're supposed to go. Thank you for being brave. Congratulations on all of it. Thomas. I smiled, wrapped an arm around Isabel's shoulder. Life has a strange way of making sense in hindsight, but only if you survive it honestly. And that's what we did. There are forms of control that don't show up as yelling or hitting. They come dressed as concern, as tradition, as just trying to help. But real love doesn't demand obedience. It offers space. And if someone truly loves you, they will learn to love the version of you they cannot design. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Sometimes, it simply means you've stopped letting their shadow walk beside you. And there is no greater revenge than living well on your terms, beside the people who love you exactly as you are. So let me ask you this. If one day you discovered that the very people who claimed to love you were secretly trying to destroy your life, what would you do? Would you stay silent? Or would you fight? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe. Because here we tell the stories that others are too afraid to say out loud. And sometimes, that's exactly where freedom begins. Goodbye, my dear friends.